With the battle for Atlas on the horizon, it seems very likely that soon we will be meeting the Relic of Creation. And I say meeting because I believe that the Relic of Creation, as well as the other relics that have yet to be introduced into the RWBY storyline as of yet, will each have a sentient spirit dwelling within it, much like Jin is the genie of the lamp. So let's discuss some of the possibilities for what each of these spirits could be, and what fairy tales they will draw their inspiration from. Let's first look, though, at Jin and the Lamp of Knowledge, the spirit that's already been introduced into the RWBY storyline. Jin is an obvious reference to the genie from the Aladdin fairy tale, not only with being the literal genie of the lamp, but also granting 3 questions every 100 years, being an obvious nod to the 3 wishes that the genies will grant, as well as just the literal place where Jin was found, the desert that was in the vault under Haven Academy, being a nod to the desert where Aladdin found the lamp in the Aladdin storyline. Once Aladdin pulled the lamp from that location, it disappeared within the sand, much like how Yang pulled the lamp from that pocket dimension, and the dimension itself disappeared afterwards. So Jin being a reference to the Aladdin storyline is pretty cut and dry, but let's look at what the genie's actual role was in that fairy tale to determine what the other spirits of the relics might be based on. The genie in Aladdin, although does have a prominent role within the story, is one that I wouldn't consider a main character. The main characters in Aladdin being Aladdin himself, Jasmine, Jafar, etc., but the genie I see as more of a plot device that drives the plot forward by offering assistance in the form of magic and knowledge at certain given times, allowing the plot to progress. And sure, without the genie, the plot would not have progressed near the way that it did within that tale, but the genie himself I don't actually consider a main character. And I believe this is going to be something that is consistent across all of the relics and the spirits that dwell within them, that they are going to be based on characters that have a very significant role within their respective stories, but aren't the main characters themselves. Still, though, without their existence in that story, the story would not have happened the way that it did. They are a main plot device, often offering the assistance of magic in various ways, much like the relics offering the knowledge that Jin has, or the abilities of creation, choice, or destruction, will offer opportune moments and will change the outcome of the story depending on when their abilities are used and how their abilities are used. So keeping these general ideas in mind, what could the Spirit of Creation be based on? What fairy tales could it draw its inspiration from? Well, there is one idea that pops to mind when considering the current state of RWBY and how many references are pointing to the Pinocchio storyline. What with Penny being the current Winter Maiden and being a reference to Pinocchio himself, with her father being Pietro, referencing Geppetto, and especially at the end of Volume 7 with the giant grim whale that appeared, likely being a reference to the terrible dogfish, also known as Monstro in the Disney adaptations, the giant whale that eventually eats Pinocchio and Geppetto. So following this train of thought, there is one character that plays a very prominent role in the Pinocchio storyline and is a pretty driving force. In fact, without this character, I don't think the Pinocchio storyline would have happened at all. And the character I'm talking about is the Blue Fairy, who used her magic to not only turn Pinocchio from an inanimate doll into a living doll, but then later into a real boy at the end of the story. And I feel it would be quite fitting for the Blue Fairy to be the Spirit of Creation. Penny, being the Winter Maiden, seeks out the Blue Fairy and asks for her assistance to, help with the things that are currently going on in Atlas. And we'll see how things play out, whether Salem gets a hold of her or etc. But I think this would be a very nice tie-in and completes the Pinocchio ensemble as a whole. Not to mention, I think there are other things that the Relic of Creation might be used for in reference to Penny that, I'll save for a separate video, but this would be a very nice tie-in. And it would follow the theme set by Jin being the genie of the lamp, a very powerful magic caster that is more of a plot device that helps drive the plot of their respective stories forward while not being a main character in and of themselves. So having the genie of the lamp and the Blue Fairy just kind of fits and follows that theme. Not to mention they're both blue in color and the relics have the gold blue aesthetic, so that would kind of fit even in that aspect. But if Rooster Teeth and the creators, writers of RWBY, wanted to go a different route with this, they could also simply reference Atlas, the god that holds up the world, considering that the Relic of Creation is literally holding up the city of Atlas. That could be an interesting route to go with it as well, if they wanted the spirits to reference their own individual thing and not carry a theme that is consistent among all of the relics. So it could be an interesting way to go, but I think that having a consistent theme would be more likely, especially with, the rule of 4 being a thing, 4 members on each team, 4 relics, 4 maidens, and the 4 spirits having similar inspirations would just make sense in my mind, at least. Moving to the 2 relics that we have not seen in the RWBY series as of yet, or at least possibly have not seen. The Relic of Destruction I'm pretty sure we haven't seen at all, but I've also had ideas previously about the Spirit of Choice. That being, for the Crown of Choice, Glinda Goodwitch, I believe, is the Spirit of Choice. She being a reference to Glinda the Good Witch of the South in the Wizard of Oz storyline, plays a very prominent role setting Dorothy on her path down the Yellow Brick Road to the Emerald City, etc., but not really a main character in and of itself. Now, outside of the movies, she does play a bit more of a role in the actual tale of the Wizard of Oz, but I'm not going to go into all the details there. She does play more of a prominent role, offering her magic more than a couple times, but she's still not a main character, just a plot device that drives the plot forward, and possibly the plot wouldn't have happened without her presence being there. And considering she is one who offers magic, and what is seen very often, at least in most or all of the depictions that I've seen, is there is always a crown worn upon her head. She does use a wand similar to the Blue Fairy, so there's not really referencing with the Blue Fairy having the Staff of Creation referencing her wand. Glinda also has a wand, but Glinda has a crown, and I think that would be very fitting for Glinda the Good Witch of the South to be the Relic of Choice, or the Spirit of Choice. I delved more into that in a separate video entirely, so I won't go into that too much detail here. It just follows the theme of the other relics, with the Genie of the Lamp, the Blue Fairy, Glinda the Good Witch of the South. They all seem to follow this similar aesthetic of people who are very powerful with magic, and through the use of said magic, help the protagonists and drive the plot forward. So now let's talk about the final relic, the Sword of Destruction. And when you think of magical swords in fairy tales, there should be one fairy tale that jumps to mind more often than most. The Sword in the Stone, and the tale of King Arthur and the sword Excalibur. And I think that the Relic of Destruction is going to be a fairly obvious reference to Excalibur. It would be very fitting for that to be the case, and then the spirit of the sword could be the Lady of the Lake, who is not a main character in King Arthur's storyline by really any means, but is a very prominent character nonetheless. And without her, the storyline probably either wouldn't have progressed or wouldn't have happened at least the way that it did, as the Lady of the Lake was the one who gave Arthur Excalibur back after it was tossed in the lake, sometimes by himself, sometimes by others, depending on the iteration, but also helps out Arthur at various points in time through the use of her magic as well, so keeps everything consistent among all the relics, and the spirits that would dwell within them. The Genie of the Lamp, Glinda the Good Witch of the South, the Blue Fairy, and the Lady of the Lake. So I think these 4 would be very fitting spirits for each of the relics to have, and I really hope that this is actually going to be the case, or if there are other spirits that could fit this overall theme that I'm kind of putting out there, or if there's another theme that you guys can come up with, let me know down below if there's other spirits or other storylines and fairy tales that you think could be represented by each of these relics. If there's another fairy tale that has a prominent sword or a prominent staff and a character that could be the spirit of the Relic of Creation or Destruction, etc. I'm really curious to know what your guys' thoughts are. But continuing on the topic of Excalibur in particular, there is one thing I would love to see in the RWBY series, and this is just pure conjecture, and it's probably never going to be this case, but if any of you have seen the anime Soul Eater, you know exactly what I'm going to reference. In Soul Eater, there is a weapon that is renowned as being the most powerful, that weapon being Excalibur. And the Excalibur itself is a sentient being, can transform into whatever this little thing is. And frankly, anyone can wield Excalibur and have this awesome power, but no one does. And that's because the spirit dwelling within the sword is annoying as all hell. maybe the Relic of Destruction in RWBY can be used an unlimited number of times. It's just no one does or wants to bother with it, because if they do, then they would have this annoying spirit following them around wherever they went and singing his annoying song. At least in the world of Soul Eater, it could be something completely different in the world of RWBY, but I really like the idea of at least one of the relics having this very out there personality, something that just you wouldn't expect being created by the God of Light. Now, as I mentioned, I fully don't believe that this is going to be the case. I think having them being level-headed beings that are knowledgeable and will be able to respond to the wielder's requests, much like Jin is very knowledgeable, being the genie of the lamp, and being able to communicate with the person making the requests of them so that they can actually have the requests fulfilled the way the user desires it. That's why it seems sensible to me to have a spirit for each of the relics. How would you be able to determine what this energy of the Relic of Creation would be put towards? How would you be able to tell this relic, okay, lift Atlas in the air, but only this high, and keep it floating there indefinitely until the staff is removed? How would you be able to communicate that to a stick if it wasn't able to communicate back or have some level of understanding of what it was you were saying? Sure, you could have the relic maybe tap into your general emotions or thought processes or something like that, but it would be much easier to have a sentient spirit, much like Jin. And I still like the idea of having one of them be completely batshit crazy, because maybe the Relic of Destruction hasn't been used since the Great War, and that was the only time it was set free, or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much my thought process overall. I do think that the relics themselves would be based off of the Genie of the Lamp, the Blue Fairy, the Glinda the Good Witch of the South, and the Lady in the Lake, following just a generic theme between all of them, and would be very fitting for each of the spirits of the relic, in my mind at least. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, got you thinking a bit more about the Relic of Creation itself, what we might come to see in Volume 8, as well as other things we might see down the road in the RWBY series. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe to keep up with everything going on the channel, all the theories, the analysis, the Volume 8 analyses that will be coming. Join the Guild of the Eternal Flame, tweet me at Phoenix Knight 7, join our Discord server as well, linked in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.